The galaxy burned under the glare of atomic fire, its core systems fractured by the relentless war between the Galactic Empire and the coalition of free systems. Across countless star systems, devastation was the norm. Entire planets razed to embers in the name of dominance or liberation. For the Empire, this war was a rebellion to be crushed, a campaign to remind the galaxy that its rulers were absolute. For the coalition, it was a desperate fight for survival, driven by the diverse but united races who had suffered under imperial rule. Among the chaos, General Threxon Jailer stood as a figure of calculated menace. The Kithorian commander had built a reputation as one of the Empire's finest tacticians. Towering and formidable, his gray-hued skin shimmered under the artificial lights of the War Council chamber aboard his flagship, Veil of Dominion. His reputation was untainted, marked by victories that earned him both fear and begrudging respect. But today, Jailer's confidence was tempered by something new, an unease that lingered as the holographic reports flickered before him. The coalition, long battered into retreat, had done the unthinkable. They had recruited a species the Empire considered beneath notice. Humans. Jailer studied the data with narrowed eyes, his taloned fingers tapping thoughtfully against the edge of the console. Humans, technologically backward and confined to the far reaches of a spiral arm, had rarely been a consideration for galactic powers. Their primitive combustion-driven ships and lack of advanced energy systems made them a negligible threat, or so the Council had assumed. Primitives, scoffed a Zullian admiral seated across the chamber, her scaled tail swaying dismissively. Their inclusion is an act of desperation, nothing more. Jailer's gaze didn't waver from the reports. Desperation, he said evenly, his deep voice carrying an edge of warning, can birth innovations we are unprepared to counter. The Admiral barked a laugh, her sharp teeth glinting in the dim light. Surely you don't suggest these, what do they call themselves, humans could pose a significant threat? Jailer turned, his eyes gleaming with subdued intensity. A skirmish at Drellin Prime. A battalion of our best troops overwhelmed by a human force half their size. No technological advantage. No superior numbers. Yet they prevailed. The chamber fell silent. Even the Admiral's smirk faltered. Jailer expanded the report's visuals, showing footage from a scout drone that had survived the aftermath. The battlefield was chaos, punctuated by the jagged remains of Empire walkers and downed aerial units. Among them moved the humans, smaller than most alien species, clad in mismatched armor, wielding salvaged weapons. They moved with precision and purpose, their coordination uncanny. They do not fight as we do, Jailer continued, his tone sharp. They are adaptive. They are relentless. They exploit weaknesses our doctrine ignores. Another officer, a feathered Avenite, leaned forward. Surely that success was a fluke. They lacked the resources for sustained campaigns. Perhaps. Jailer's talons tapped once more. But flukes do not cripple our systems. He switched to another recording, this one showing the aftermath of an electronic assault. Entire fleets of Empire drones rendered inert by a single, calculated pulse. Ships stranded in the vacuum of space, their once impervious shields useless. They turned our own technology against us, Jailer said grimly. And this is only the beginning. They are learning. The Council murmured uneasily, but dissent lingered. Many still dismissed the humans as an annoyance, not a threat. For centuries, the Empire's strength had been unchallenged. It was unthinkable that a species of such limited means could alter that balance. Jailer's own doubt warred with his instincts. He'd fought too many battles to ignore what he saw. The human strategies bore the marks of desperation, yes, but also brilliance. Where other species would crumble under the Empire's might, the humans adapted, using what little they had to devastating effect. Their victories were not accidents. The data corroborated his fears. On Drellin Prime, Humans had employed guerrilla tactics unheard of in the Empire's structured warfare. They set traps that capitalized on terrain and used decoy signals to lure Empire forces into ambushes. Their fleet engagements were similarly unorthodox, hiding among debris fields, using outdated kinetic weaponry to bypass energy shields, even improvising makeshift cloaking devices from asteroid materials. Jailer had already dispatched covert teams to gather more intelligence, but the preliminary findings painted a clear picture. Humanity was unlike any adversary the Empire had faced. Their primitive beginnings had bred resilience, and their isolation had forced them to innovate in ways that confounded more advanced civilizations. But he faced a dilemma. To argue that humans posed a real threat would be to challenge the Council's hubris, a dangerous prospect in a hierarchy built on dominance. And yet, to ignore the warning signs would be a graver error. As the Council meeting adjourned, Jailer lingered, staring at the holographic projection of Earth. It was a small, unremarkable world by galactic standards, yet it had produced a species capable of unsettling the mighty Empire. His mind churned with unease. Walking to the bridge, Jailer summoned his aide, a younger Kithorian with sharp eyes. "I want every available resource allocated to analyzing human strategies. Every battle report, every intercepted transmission, everything." Quietly, the aide hesitated, glancing around the bustling bridge. "Do you believe they can truly challenge the Empire, General?" Jailer's expression hardened. "I believe they will try, and I believe they may succeed if we continue to underestimate them." He turned to the observation deck, gazing out at the vast expanse of space. For all its power, the Empire had grown complacent, blinded by its own arrogance. And in that blindness, a small, determined species had found its opening. Whispers of humanity's victories were spreading across the galaxy, reaching even the Empire's most remote territories. Already, insurgent groups within the coalition were looking to the humans for guidance, adopting their unconventional methods. Jailer knew it was only a matter of time before this so-called primitive species forced the Empire to re-evaluate not just its tactics, but its entire perception of power. The thought unsettled him, but it also intrigued him. A war was fought not just with weapons, but with minds, with the will to endure and adapt. And humanity, it seemed, possessed both in spades. The facility was a fortress of Empire engineering, nestled within the rugged cliffs of the barren moon Vikros 7. Massive walls bristling with automated turrets surrounded the central processing towers, where the Empire's most advanced atomic weapons were forged. It was a linchpin in the war effort, a place considered impenetrable by the Empire's own commanders. That belief would prove their undoing. Under the cover of Vikros 7's perpetual storms, a human strike team moved with precision. There were only 5 of them, clad in composite armor patched together from scavenged alien tech and their own innovations. They carried no energy weapons. Instead, their arsenal consisted of projectile rifles, crude EMP grenades, and a hacking device cobbled from salvaged components. Their leader, Captain Eric Sol, was a veteran of Earth's countless conflicts, his weathered face a testament to a life forged in battle. At his side, a young engineer named Lena controlled a makeshift AI interface, a device small enough to fit in her palm but powerful enough to disrupt systems centuries ahead of human technology. As the team approached the outer perimeter, Lena's fingers danced over the device, weaving through the layers of Empire security with startling ease. The turrets faltered, cameras turned away, a corridor of vulnerability opened, and the team advanced, silent and focused. Inside the facility, the Empire's staff worked obliviously. Humans, in their arrogance, were a non-factor to them. This complacency had been humanity's greatest ally since the beginning of the war. Sol's team navigated the labyrinthine corridors, avoiding detection with a blend of stealth and deception. They placed EMP charges at critical junctures, targeting the facility's central reactor. When the alarms finally sounded, it was too late. Empire guards scrambled to respond, but their systems failed to coordinate. Communication lines went dark. Turrets fired erratically, often at friendly targets. The chaos was total. The Empire soldiers, tall and imposing, expected a direct confrontation. Instead, they were met with shadow and misdirection. The humans used the facility's layout against them, leading patrols into ambushes and narrow corridors where their size became a disadvantage. Every shot the humans fired was precise, every grenade thrown with purpose. In the final moments of the mission, as the charges were armed and the team prepared to exfiltrate, an unexpected force arrived. A squad of elite Empire soldiers, larger in number and armed with devastating plasma weaponry, cornered the strike team at the reactor's core. Captain Sol assessed the situation with a grim calm. The mission had to succeed. Lena volunteered without hesitation. She activated the final sequence on her AI device, ensuring the charges would detonate in sync, and stepped forward. With nothing more than a distraction grenade in hand, she bought the rest of the team time to escape. The last image of her was a defiant smile as she triggered the device, flooding the reactor chamber with electromagnetic interference and blinding the enemy just long enough for her team to vanish into the storm. The charges detonated moments later, reducing the facility to a radioactive crater. The explosion rippled across the system, disrupting Empire supply lines and halting production of their most powerful weapons. The humans had struck a blow that far outweighed the size of their force. General Threxon Jailer studied the aftermath from the bridge of his flagship, the holographic projection of the destroyed facility spinning slowly before him. He replayed the footage from surviving drones, watching the humans' movements frame by frame. Their tactics were unorthodox, unpredictable even, but undeniably effective. Jailer's analysis highlighted patterns that his peers refused to see. The humans operated with an efficiency and unity that the Empire could not replicate. Their soldiers fought not out of fear or obligation, but out of conviction, a quality that was rare in the galaxy. Each human seemed willing to lay down their life for the collective goal, and that made them formidable. A junior officer approached cautiously, breaking Jailer's thoughts. "General, the Council is dismissing the incident as an isolated attack. They claim the humans cannot replicate such efforts on a larger scale." Jailer's expression darkened. He waved a clawed hand, dismissing the officer's report. The Council's arrogance was predictable but frustrating. He had warned them before, and he would warn them again, though he doubted they would listen. The General's private musings turned to the human engineer whose final moments had been captured on the facility's security feeds. Her resolve, her willingness to sacrifice herself for the success of her mission, was something he could not ignore. The Empire's soldiers, bred for loyalty and conditioned to follow orders, lacked that fire. Jailer convened a meeting with his command staff, determined to push the point. "We are underestimating them," he said bluntly, projecting the mission footage onto the central holodeck. "Every one of you must review this data. Analyze it. These humans are not mere opportunists. They are strategists." "But General," an officer objected, "their technology is rudimentary. They lack the infrastructure to sustain a prolonged campaign." Jailer's glare silenced him. "They lack our technology, yes, but they are not constrained by it. They adapt. Where we see limits, they see opportunities. Look at what they achieved with salvage and ingenuity. Imagine what they will do when they have access to more." Despite Jailer's insistence, resistance remained. The Empire's hierarchy was rigid, its leaders entrenched in their superiority. To acknowledge humanity's potential threat would mean admitting their own vulnerabilities, and that was a step few were willing to take. As the meeting adjourned, Jailer stood alone, gazing out at the stars. He felt a growing tension within himself, a mixture of respect for humanity and frustration with his own kind. The war was shifting, and he was beginning to see that the Empire's greatest enemy might not be the coalition, but its own arrogance. He made a decision. Humanity's ingenuity would not go unnoticed, not while he held command. In the shadows of his ship's intelligence division, he ordered a deep-dive analysis of every known human engagement. The results, he suspected, would confirm what he already knew. Humanity was not a nuisance to be swatted aside. They were a force to be reckoned with, and their rise was only just beginning. The Empire's superweapon, the Dreadstar Apex, loomed over the Draxan system like a harbinger of doom. Constructed within the gravitational cradle of a dying star, the weapon was a marvel of destructive engineering, capable of obliterating entire fleets with its concentrated energy cannon. For months, the Coalition had fought to secure intelligence on its whereabouts, and now humanity had been entrusted with its destruction. Captain Elena Dre, commander of the patched-together Iron Dawn, stood at the helm of the human fleet. Her sharp, determined gaze swept over the holographic map projected before her. The fleet was a ragtag collection of outdated Earthships, salvaged Coalition vessels, and a few stolen Empire frigates. To the untrained eye, they were a mismatched, chaotic force. To Dre, they were the culmination of humanity's indomitable spirit. "Everyone clear on the plan?" she asked, her voice steady despite the stakes. Her first officer, a wiry man named Karan, smirked. "You mean the plan where we pretend to be suicidal asteroid miners until we get close enough to punch the Empire in the throat?" "Clear as day, Captain." Laughter rippled across the bridge. Dre allowed herself a brief smile. Humor was their armor, the way they kept the weight of inevitable losses at bay. "Good. Let's make it hurt, people." The fleet moved into position, threading its way through the dense asteroid field that surrounded the Draxan system. The Iron Dawn led the charge, its rusted hull bristling with repurposed railguns and jury-rigged missile launchers. Dre's strategy relied on the field's chaotic energy signatures to mask their approach, a tactic the Empire's rigid AI systems had difficulty countering. As they closed the distance, the fleet deployed decoy beacons and hacked into the asteroid field's mining drones, reprogramming them to emit false fleet signatures. On the Empire's scanners, it appeared as though a much larger armada was approaching. General Threxan Jailer, aboard the Veil of Dominion, observed the sensor feeds with narrowed eyes. He recognized the tactic immediately. "Human deception," he murmured. "A crude but effective smokescreen. Prepare countermeasures." The Empire fleet moved to intercept, leaving a defensive line around the Dreadstar Apex. What Jailer couldn't see, however, was the second layer of humanity's strategy. While the Empire focused on the Phantom Fleet, a smaller strike group of cloaked ships slipped through the chaos, aiming directly for the Apex. On the Iron Dawn, Dre monitored the shifting battlefield with razor-sharp focus. "They're biting," she said. Karan signaled the strike team. "They've got their window." The strike group, led by a sleek, stolen Empire corvette, surged forward, its cloak barely holding under the strain of its modified drive. Within the group, engineers worked furiously to suppress the telltale energy spikes that might betray their presence. Meanwhile, the human main fleet engaged the Empire's forces head-on. The Iron Dawn took point, its railguns launching high-velocity slugs that tore through the Empire's smaller frigates. Empire ships, designed for energy-based warfare, struggled against the kinetic projectiles. "EMP charges ready," Karan reported. "Fire at will," Dre ordered. Across the fleet, modified EMP missiles launched, their detonations sending ripples of disruption through the Empire's lines. AI-controlled drones went dark, and the shields of larger ships flickered and failed. For a brief moment, the battlefield belonged to humanity. But the Empire's response was swift. Jailer, anticipating the EMP assault, had kept a reserve force further back. These reinforcements surged forward, hammering the human fleet with precise plasma volleys. Ships began to fall, their cobbled-together defenses no match for the concentrated firepower. On the Iron Dawn, damage reports flooded in. "We've lost the Resolute and the Starfire," Karan said grimly. Dre clenched her fists. Every loss was a knife to her heart, but she couldn't afford to falter. "Tell the strike team to push forward. The Dreadstar Apex is the priority." The strike group reached the apex, slipping into its shadow before their cloaking devices gave out. As alarms blared across the superweapon, human engineers deployed their ace, a malicious AI virus designed to override the Apex's systems. Inside the Corvette's cramped command center, a young programmer named Mira worked frantically. Her AI companion, nicknamed Vex, interfaced with the Apex, bypassing layer after layer of Empire encryption. "It's fighting back," Mira muttered, sweat dripping down her face. "Then fight harder," barked her captain. Vex delivered its payload, and for a moment, the Apex went silent. Then its massive cannon, once a symbol of the Empire's might, began to power down, its energy siphoned away by the virus. Back on the Iron Dawn, Dre received the confirmation signal. "Strike team has neutralized the cannon," Karan reported. Dre allowed herself a moment of relief before the next wave of Empire ships bore down on them. "All ships full retreat. Get the strike team out of there." The retreat was brutal. Empire forces pursued with unrelenting ferocity, determined to punish the humans for their audacity. One by one, human ships were destroyed, their sacrifices buying precious seconds for the survivors. The Iron Dawn held the rear guard, taking the brunt of the Empire's assault. Dre stood firm, rallying her crew even as explosions rocked the ship. As the fleet approached the edge of the system, reinforcements from the Coalition arrived, their larger ships driving the Empire back. For the first time in the war, humanity's tactics had turned the tide of a major battle. On the Vale of Dominion, Jailer watched the remnants of the human fleet slip away. His claws tightened around the edge of the holotable. He should have felt satisfaction at the losses they'd inflicted, but instead, he felt a grudging respect. "They should have been annihilated," an officer muttered beside him. Jailer's gaze remained fixed on the fading blips of human ships. "They should have," he said quietly. "But they weren't." He replayed the battle in his mind, dissecting every move. Humanity's strength wasn't in their technology or numbers. It was in their resolve, their ingenuity, their willingness to endure. They had faced overwhelming odds and emerged battered but victorious. As the bridge fell silent, Jailer felt a growing certainty. This war was no longer a simple matter of dominance. Humanity had become a force capable of reshaping the galaxy, and he would need to be ready. The Empire's war machine had long been regarded as an unstoppable force, a monolith of power that subdued entire star systems with precision and overwhelming might. But the rise of humanity had sent ripples of uncertainty through its ranks. What began as isolated victories by an underestimated species had grown into a narrative that refused to be ignored. Tales of human ingenuity and resilience spread like wildfire across the galaxy, whispered among soldiers and shouted in rebellion-prone colonies. Empire officers found morale faltering among their troops. Soldiers stationed at forward bases reported sleepless nights haunted by rumors of human sabotage teams and their seemingly supernatural ability to strike from the shadows. These weren't mere rebels. They were hunters, cunning and relentless. The fear wasn't just psychological. Tactical assessments showed an alarming trend. The Empire's superior technology was being circumvented with primitive yet effective countermeasures. The humans didn't fight fair, and it was working. At the Empire's central command on Dracon Prime, tension gripped the Leadership Council. Holoscreens flickered with reports of recent defeats and resource disruptions. A high-ranking official slammed his fist on the table, his scaled face contorted with anger. "Explain to me how a species barely out of their gravity well continues to humiliate us," he snarled, his gaze fixed on General Threxon Jailer. Jailer, standing at the edge of the room, remained calm. The humans adapt faster than any species we've encountered. They leverage their weaknesses into strengths, exploiting gaps in our strategies we didn't even realize existed. They are primitives, another official scoffed. This is not a matter of their brilliance, but of your failure, General. Jailer's claws curled against the metal table, but he held his tongue. He knew the Council's arrogance was their greatest weakness. They couldn't fathom that their long-held dominance might be challenged by a species they deemed inferior. The meeting dissolved into blame and recrimination, leaving Jailer to reflect on his growing doubts. Meanwhile, on Earth, the war had become an all-encompassing effort. Cities scarred by centuries of conflict now buzzed with a renewed purpose. Factories churned out weapons and ships, many of them cobbled together from whatever materials could be found. Families rationed food and energy, redirecting resources to the war effort. Artists painted murals of human soldiers standing tall against alien war machines, and poets wrote verses celebrating the spirit of defiance. In a makeshift command center beneath the ruins of an old city, Commander Elena Dre addressed a gathering of civilians. Her voice carried the weight of the battles she had fought, tempered by a fierce hope. "This war isn't just about survival," she said, her eyes sweeping across the crowd. "It's about showing the galaxy that freedom is worth fighting for. Every bolt you forge, every meal you prepare for our soldiers, every moment you give to this cause, it all matters. Humanity is strongest when we stand together." Among the crowd, a young boy handed her a small, crudely made sculpture of a soldier holding a flag. "For luck," he said shyly. Dre knelt and took the gift, her resolve hardening. These people were her reason to fight, her reason to win. Across the galaxy, General Jailer found himself in an uncharacteristic moment of hesitation. During an inspection of a high-security prison, he encountered a human prisoner, a middle-aged woman named Ruth Marlowe. She had been captured during a failed sabotage mission and was considered insignificant by her captors. Yet when Jailer questioned her, he found her demeanor unsettling. "You've lost everything," Jailer said, his voice low and measured. "Your fleet is scattered. Your resources are dwindling. What keeps you fighting?" Ruth met his gaze with steady eyes. "You wouldn't understand," she said. "You fight because you're ordered to. We fight because we choose to. Because freedom is worth any price." Her words lingered in the air, defiant and unyielding. Jailer felt a flicker of something he couldn't quite name. Admiration, perhaps, or envy. "You speak of freedom," he said. "But what is it worth when it costs you your lives, your worlds?" Ruth leaned forward, her voice firm. "Freedom is worth everything. It's why your empire will lose. You fight to preserve power. We fight to preserve ourselves, our future, our children. Tell me, General, what does your empire fight for?" Jailer had no answer. The empire's propaganda spoke of order and unity. But in that moment, those words felt hollow. He left the prison in silence, Ruth's voice echoing in his mind. Back on his flagship, Jailer studied the growing schisms within the empire. Factions within the leadership bickered over strategy, their unity fractured by pride and self-interest. Even the soldiers under his command showed signs of wear, their confidence eroded by a string of defeats. In contrast, humanity seemed to thrive under adversity. Their unity wasn't imposed, but chosen. Every human victory was a testament to their collective determination, their willingness to sacrifice for something greater than themselves. As Jailer stood at the viewport of the Veil of Dominion, watching the stars, he felt the weight of his doubts. The war was no longer a matter of tactical superiority. It was a battle of ideals, and humanity's resolve was proving far stronger than the Empire's arrogance. For the first time, Jailer wondered if he was on the wrong side of history. The contested nexus, known as the Crucible Nebula, was a convergence of warp lanes and energy-rich systems, the key to controlling the galaxy's central territories. It was here that the war would end, one way or another. Humanity's fleet, battered and outnumbered, prepared for a final stand against the Empire's might. The nebula's swirling energy storms would conceal their movements, but it would not protect them from annihilation. Captain Elena Dre stood aboard the Iron Dawn, addressing her fleet. Holograms of commanders filled the air around her, their faces hardened by years of battle. "This is it," Dre said, her voice steady but fierce. "They've thrown everything they have at us. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon designed to make us kneel. But we don't kneel. We stand. We fight. And today, we show them what it means to be human." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "We fight not for conquest, but for the freedom of every being crushed under their boot. If this is our last stand, let it be the one they never forget. Let it be the one that breaks their chains forever." The fleet roared in response. Even through the holograms, Dre felt their resolve like a flame. The plan was audacious, bordering on reckless. Simultaneous strikes on multiple fronts, each designed to overload the Empire's defenses and sow chaos in their ranks. Small, fast ships would harry supply lines and distract the Empire's escorts, while the main fleet would engage their central formation. A strike team, meanwhile, would infiltrate the Veil of Dominion, the Empire's flagship and command center, with the intent of severing their communication network. As the battle commenced, the Crucible Nebula became a storm of fire and metal. Human ships darted through energy storms, their movements unpredictable and chaotic. Empire formations struggled to adapt to the multi-pronged assault, their rigid tactics faltering in the face of humanity's relentless ingenuity. General Threxon Jailer stood on the bridge of the Veil of Dominion, issuing orders with precision. He had anticipated humanity's desperation and prepared his fleet accordingly, but even he couldn't ignore the sheer audacity of their tactics. "Admirable," he murmured, watching as a human frigate rammed an Empire destroyer, sacrificing itself to open a hole in their lines. He felt a pang of respect mingled with a growing unease. Jailer had spent his life fighting for the Empire, upholding its ideals of order and dominance. Yet as he watched humanity's defiance, he found those ideals crumbling. The Empire claimed to bring unity, but it thrived on oppression and fear. Humanity, for all its chaos, fought for something greater than itself. A sudden alert drew his attention. A strike team had breached the Veil of Dominion. Jailer ordered his guards to intercept them, but the damage was already done. Key systems flickered as the team unleashed a virus, disrupting communication and targeting systems across the fleet. Captain Dre's fleet seized the moment. Her voice rang out across the comm channels, rallying her ships. "Push forward," she commanded. "This is our chance. For Earth, for the Coalition, for every soul yearning to be free. Push." As human ships surged, Jailer faced a choice that had been building within him since the war began. His officers looked to him for orders, their confidence shaken by the breach. "General?" one of them asked, voice trembling. Jailer closed his eyes, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. In humanity, he had seen a strength the Empire lacked, the strength to fight not out of obligation, but out of conviction. When he opened his eyes, his path was clear. "Prepare to transmit the following data to the Coalition fleet," he said, his voice steady. His officers froze. "General, that would be treason." "It would be justice," Jailer interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. He transmitted the coordinates of the Empire's remaining strongholds, along with critical vulnerabilities in their fleet. Then, he ordered his ship to stand down. Dre's fleet received the data moments later. As her analysts confirmed its authenticity, she felt a surge of hope. "They've just handed us the key to victory," she said. With Jailer's intelligence, humanity's fleet exploited the Empire's weaknesses, targeting key ships and command nodes with surgical precision. One by one, the Empire's ships fell, their formation collapsing into disarray. On the Veil of Dominion, Jailer watched the chaos unfold. He had betrayed the Empire he had sworn to serve, but for the first time in his life, he felt at peace. The battle ended in a resounding victory for humanity and the Coalition. The Empire's fleet retreated, its power broken. Across the galaxy, word spread of the victory at the Crucible Nebula, sparking uprisings in occupied systems. In the aftermath, the Coalition declared an end to the war. Humanity, once dismissed as a primitive backwater species, emerged as a symbol of resilience and hope. They were no longer seen as outsiders, but as leaders in the fight for freedom. As for Jailer, his betrayal did not go unpunished. Stripped of his rank and exiled from the Empire, he found himself wandering the galaxy. Yet he carried no regret. In humanity, he had found something worth fighting for. As he stood on a distant world watching the stars, he reflected on his choice. The galaxy had changed, and so had he. In the end, he had chosen not power but honor. And in doing so, he had found redemption.